Hey guys, Languagehacker here, and a new patch has just come out, one of the largest we've actually ever seen in terms of changes. So let's dive in, talk about all the changes, and see what's going to be on top after the meta kind of solves itself. Dev comment, card updates. The current power level of the top decks after the launch of Murder at Castle Nathria is pretty close to the level that we'd like it to be. Okay? We're happy with decks like Imp Warlock and Control Shaman being powerful, but we're less happy with the power level of the weakest classes. That's fair. It's okay for cards. It's okay for classes / decks to be powerful, but it's less okay for classes to be absolutely unplayable, which there are a few. So while we did a few touches to the top decks with the goal of reducing play against frustration, so this isn't necessarily decreasing the power level by a crazy amount, but play against frustration is decks that feel bad to play against. The primary goal of this patch was to elevate the classes that are struggling in the current meta, and I think that's a very good idea. It's not necessarily the solution to just nerf everything down to the point where nothing is powerful and fun, but maybe some slight tweaks to make things a bit more acceptable, and also bringing some stuff up so we have more variation in what we can play. The following cards have been adjusted down their power. Celestial Alignment. Old, set each player to 0 mana crystals, set the cost of all cards in our hands in both hands and decks to 1. But the new version is set your mana crystals to 0, set the cost of all cards in your hand and deck to 1. So this is now one-sided, it does not affect your opponent. I think I'm okay with this change. I think alignment is still going to be a little toxic, but this is now less of a disruption card. So you can still further your own game plan with this, but you no longer disrupt your opponent's game plan. So that does reduce the power level quite a bit. However, I don't know if this is enough to kind of, this seems more of like a slap on the wrist for Druids, because there's still a lot of Druid cards that I think are kind of problematic in terms of ramp, guff, and even Nerfs to some extent. And even Wild Growth and Wild, whatever, the 4 mana 3/2 that draws a card and that draws a nature card and ramps. I think there's a bit too much going on ramp-wise. And I'd like to see a little bit more of a tweak to something like Guff. But still, I'm happy that they changed alignment, because alignment was very frustrating to play against. Dev comment, we hear you. Okay. Alignment has been a frustrating card to play against for a while now, and has remained that way after the release of Murder at Castle Nathria, even if it is not a balanced outlier. True. Win rates for this archetype wasn't super high. It was just very annoying to play against. This change is targeted at removing as much of that frustration as possible, while still retaining the primary effect for players who enjoy the big turns it can allow, which makes sense. You make it less of a disruption card and more of an activator for your own stuff. I get that. So I think this is a reasonable change, but not the change we necessarily need to Druid. Stag Spirit Wild Seed. Old, dormant for 3 turns. Equip a 4/2 Great Bow. New, dormant for 3 turns. Equip a 3/2 Great Bow. So it reduces the damage output a little bit for the Stag Spirits, which affect all of the Wild Seed cards. Dev comment, the Wild Seed package has been a fun addition to Hunter, but Stag Spirit has been putting out more face damage than we intended. We hope Wild Seeds will remain a key part of Hunter decks going forward, but will be a little less ubiquitous across all Hunter archetypes. That makes sense. This is a nice little nudge, even if Hunters aren't super, super broken. And I think Hunters actually had really good stats last I checked before this patch. And part of the reason is because I think all the decks were running Wild Seeds. So this is a slight tweak to bring it down a little bit in power level. I like that. Makes sense. Snowfall Guardian. Old, 3/3, Battlecry, freeze all their minions, gain +1/+1 for each frozen minion. New, 5 attack, 5 health, so just a buff to the initial stats, but Battlecry freeze all their minions, so it no longer grows based off of how many other minions are frozen. So higher stats, just as a standalone card, which means it's technically slightly better for tempo, but I mean 6 mana 5/5 isn't exactly great tempo, but reduces the growth of it, which also then in tandem reduces the impact of Brilliant Macaw copying this battle cry, because the Brilliant Macaw will also not be bigger. It'll just be a 3 mana 3/3 freeze the board. So its effect will still be very powerful at reducing board presence of your opponent in terms of them trying to kill you. But it no longer swings it back in your favor now, because, oh, now I have a 12/12 or a 13/13 threatening lethal. So I think this is a good change, because I think having that sort of freeze effect is okay, even though I get it's frustrating to play against. The big issue is that not only it stops you from activating your game plan, but it just gives them a game plan just by playing a card, which I think was a little toxic. So I think I do like this change. Dev comment, Control Shaman has been one of the most dominant decks since the expansion launch. Not just this expansion, it's been like this for a while, so I'm glad they're finally tweaking it. A big part of the power comes from their ability to repeatedly freeze enemy boards while also pressuring the life totals, thanks to Snowfall Guardian. We hope that by removing the pressure this card applies, it will be less difficult for players to navigate. Agreed. I think this is a solid change. You can still have that sort of freeze game plan, but you don't just win the game because you freeze a board twice and now you have like an extra 12 stats over 2 turns because of that. So that's good, or more than 12. All right, Vile Library. Give a friendly minion +1/+1. This is the old one. Repeat for each imp you control. The new one is give a minion +1/+1 for each imp you control. So you still buff it based on how many imps you have, but you no longer get the initial +1/+1 buff. And this is relevant. I'm not sure if this is enough. I think I would have liked to see a mana bump. However, this will still make the class a little bit weaker. There are games where Warlocks play 1 mana minion, then play this and buff that 1 mana minion, even if it's not an imp. Namely, this kind of affects the Fluster Librarian opening. We play Fluster Librarian on 1, follow it up with Vile Library, buff it, take a value trade maybe, or just start pressing face. So this is a tweak. I'm not sure if this tweak is enough, but if their goal is just to, again, give a slight slap on the wrist for Warlock while bringing other classes up, I think this is fine. Def comment, we're happy to see that Imp Warlock has been one of the top performing decks in this expansion, but a little bit too much of its power is coming from the burst damage the single card allows. Agreed. We're lightly touching Vile Library because we don't want it to go away. We just want to bring the deck more in line with the other decks in the meta. The thing is, this deck is quite a bit ahead of like every other deck in the meta right now if we look at stats. So I don't know if this is... I think this is a good start. We'll see how the stats kind of play out over the next little bit, but I think this might not be enough. Global Illusionist. This target's Wild. I think this used to be a 4-mana card. Now it's a 5-mana card, so it slows down, I think, Big Rogue and Wild. Not super relevant for Standard, which is most of my audience, but worth noting. Following cards have been adjusted up in their power. So these have all been nerfs. So not too many nerfs here. There are some cards that I really think should see nerfs. But it might be enough to bring up some buffs and then bring other decks up to the power level of the current meta decks. And I think that's good. So let's see what they've buffed and talk about that. The following cards have been adjusted up in their power. Relic Vault, so this is the Demon Hunter location. It used to be 3 mana, it costs 2 mana. A lot of the relics in Demon Hunter kind of, I don't want to say missed the mark, because I think they did bring something unique to the class, a different sort of play style, but they were a little too weak. So I think tweaking a couple of cards here, and we'll see that they have buffed another relic as well, will bring that sort of archetype more in line, because it did feel a little too slow against a lot of, in fact, almost every matchup. So I like that they're changing this a little bit. That's nice. Relic of Extinction. This is the 1 mana, deal X damage to a random enemy minion twice and improve your future relics. It used to be 2 mana. I think this is a good change as well. This itself might be a little scary. 1 mana with this much removal might be a little scary, but honestly, like, Demon Hunter was struggling very hard. So I think even with these changes, it won't be like, oh my god, Demon Hunter is broken. So I think this is fine that they're experimenting and making this a little bit better. I think it's good. Dev comments. Relics are a fun and flavorful new archetype from Murder at Castle Nathria, but they haven't had the chance to shine. Agreed. We're hoping that a couple of buffs will make these cards easier to squeeze into turns and make the whole package feel better to try in a variety of decks. I agree. There might be like a pure relic sort of Fel DH you can run, but you might be able to squeeze this into some other archetypes as well. And especially when they're like this cheap, it makes sense as well. The 5 mana relic that lets you draw could be put in a few different archetypes as a draw package, so I don't mind that at all. And this will make it a lot easier to squeeze them in. Next up, Bibliomite. It used to be a 4/4, now it's a 5/4. 2 mana 5/4. It's quite aggressive. I don't think this was the problem with the archetype. I think it was just a little too clunky in general, but small tweaks might fix that clunkiness, so I am okay with this change. All right, next up we got Magnifying Glaive. It used to be a 2/2 weapon, now it's a 3/2 weapon for 3 mana. Honestly, I don't know if this is that relevant. One of the reasons Demon Hunter kind of fell off aggressively is because, well, there's a couple of reasons. One, the cards just don't work together well enough against the other decks in the meta. But two, also Prince Renethal coming into play means that people have 40 health, so the extra little bit of damage here and there might not actually add up to be enough. And this is a nudge in the right direction, but I don't know if this will actually make it good enough. Is it a good buff? I think so. I think if there's a card to touch them, this might be one of the better ones in terms of the aggressive arsenal. But I'm not sure if this will push like an aggressive Demon Hunter over the edge to the point where, okay, now this is really the nuts. We'll see. It's hard to say without actually seeing the decks in play after people experiment and whatnot. We'll see. We were a little too safe on the numbers for the new aggro Demon Hunter cards, which I think is safe because when Demon Hunter came out, holy crap, was it busted, and my god, I was... Anyways, it was really bad. We hope these buffs will make the low hand size deck a little more appealing. I agree. I think these are any interesting changes. We'll see if it's good enough. My thinking is probably not, but maybe something comes out of the ashes / dust and ends up being good enough. All right, Abyssal Depths. Holy crap, more Demon Hunter cards? Dude, calm down. Okay, it used to be 4 mana, now it's 3 mana. It's draw your 2 lowest cost minions, which can be good for a variety of things. It can either tutor specific cards, i.e. Vandar, which is good in like a big Demon Hunter deck where you're trying to discount bigger stuff. And it can also just be good in a deck where you just want to draw cards and combo pieces. So this being 3 mana is actually kind of quite relevant. At 4 mana, it was like, ugh. But at 3 mana, it's like, it hurts a little, but you know, it might be worth it. Could maybe even be slotted into some sort of quest Demon Hunter deck at this point as well. 3 mana draw 2 isn't crazy, but when you have very guaranteed card draw, it's very good at completing quest portions. So this could be actually pretty good. Battle Worn Vanguard. This was nerfed in the past. It became a 2 mana 2/1. Now it's a 2 mana 2/2 again, making the aggressive archetype a little bit better, which also fits in line with like the Bibliomite Magnifying Glaive changes. Brute, 8 to 7 mana. Philosophy's not in, Glide's not in, which makes this card a bit more palatable, even if it is reduced to 7 mana. I'm not even sure if this will see enough play with this reduction, because I don't think any decks even want to run something like this. So if a new archetype pops up that's either quest-oriented or very, very card draw-oriented, maybe this fits in, but I'm still skeptical that this sees competitive play after like a few days of testing. Demon Hunter has been struggling in a big way this expansion. We felt that changes to new cards alone might not be enough to bring the power level of this class in line with the rest of this meta. So we're buffing a few older cards to help bridge the gap. Okay, we're hoping that Abyssal Depths can now function as a powerful tool for a variety of Demon Hunter decks, new and old alike. Makes sense. The reverts to Battle Worn Vanguard and Irebound Brute should make them more attractive options for the class. Brute me, dude. Okay. I mean, we'll see. It's hard to say. Theory is very nice and all when I'm looking at an individual card and saying, wow, this card's good or this card's bad or whatever. But it ultimately decides, I mean, it's ultimately decided based on how it fits into specific decks and how it lines up against the meta. So time will tell. Next up, Paladin. So the Countess, which is a 7 mana 7/7, which fits into pure Paladin. If you have no neutral cards in your deck, get 3 invitations. It used to cost 3 mana. Now those invitations cost 2 mana, but I believe the Countess is still a 7 mana 7/7. And this is Discover Legendary Minion from another class, cost 0. Nice change. I think the main thing for this is that the turn after you play Countess, you can play all 3 invitations. Before, they were 3 mana each, so after you play Countess on 7, or coin it out on 6, the 3 invitations together would cost 9 mana. You can't play all of them. So now you can play them all in one turn. This is not going to matter, and like even the remote, like, sure, it's small tweaks, but I don't think this will make it playable. Dev comment: as the big reward for the pure Paladin archetype, the Countess wasn't, well, rewarding enough. This change should make her feel better in decks that are willing to pay the cost of cutting all neutral cards. I don't think so at all. Absolutely not. But we'll see. But no. Stand Against Darkness, also Paladin card. Used to cost 5 mana, now costs 4. This summons 5/1/1 Silverhand Recruits. It's pretty good change. At 5 mana, this was like kind of meh. There's really not that much dude synergy, and by dudes I mean Silverhand Recruits. There's a couple. There's the Quest, there's Steward the Steward, and yeah, that's about it. There's a couple of tangentially related cards as well. There's Promotion, there's Bigun, something Bigun, I forget what the card's called. It's a 4 mana card that was introduced in Castle Nathria, but I don't know if this is really good enough. We'll see. At 4 mana, this might just be a playable card, but I don't think this is a reason to play Paladin. You're not going to cube a Paladin deck and say, oh my god, Stand Against Darkness, this is how I blow people out of games, right? So, Warhorse Trainer. Old, your Silverhand Recruits have +1 attack. New, your Silverhand Recruits have +2 attack and taunt, and it's still a 3 mana 3/4. Okay, this might be a reason to play this then. +2 attack and taunt are quite big. So taunt is good for a couple of reasons. One, because it protects the Paladin's face, but 2, because it protects this card itself, right? Let's say you do go Stand Against Darkness on 4, or you tempo this out, they can't remove it, and then you play this. Then suddenly this isn't removable because there's a bunch of taunts in the way. So this might be okay. I think it's still a little clunky, but this Might be a step in the right direction. Promotion, this is one of the new cards. Instead of just giving a silver hand recruit +3/+3, it gives a taunt as well. Again, slightly better, but it's not really groundbreaking or game-changing. I don't think Paladin's actually going to see more play because of this. There'll be a bit of experimentation, and the decks that are running these cards are going to be slightly better because, I mean, you can't say that changes didn't happen. Changes did happen, and 1 mana changes are still quite relevant, but I don't think this is going to make the class playable. Dev comment. The new Silverhand archetype has come up much shorter than we hoped it would. Cards like Stand Against Darkness and Warhorse Trainer were simply not at the power level of modern Hearthstone. So we're buffing them up to see what they can do in this new age. To top it off, promotion now comes with a raise. That was a good joke. You know another joke? Paladin. Edwin. Old, 4 mana 4/4. New, 3 mana 3/3. This was a mistake. All I'm going to say about this. I think they made this change before they had information about Rogue being popular and played recently with like the Lambie series Rogue coming out in the Masters Tour. But out of all the cards to change in this archetype, I absolutely don't think this was the one to change. This was already one of the highest win rate, if not the highest win rate. It wasn't the highest win rate, but it was one of the highest win rate cards in any deck it's played in. And I don't think this needed a buff. Now, we're going to go through and see they made some other changes, but I would not be surprised to see this reverted. Now, I'm a known rogue hater, so you have to take some of my words with a grain of salt, but I've seen some rogue enthusiasts also say on Twitter, oh, I don't know, but this was a bit too far, you know, so we'll see, but I think this was not a good change to make. Sprint, old 6 mana, costs 5. This actually used to be 7 mana initially, and now it's 5 mana, draw 4 cards. Probably pretty playable at this point. It's not the nuts, but, you know, prep this out, draw 4 cards for 3 mana. Okay, this might be playable. Cool. Silverleaf Poison, used to cost 2 mana, costs 1. I think there's still some rogue weapons hanging around. Is Swine Tusk Shank still in? If it is, this actually is kind of interesting. Deadly Poison is still in, so you maybe could make some sort of deck about that. And even if you don't run specific rogue weapons for this, even the hero power, right? 3 mana, draw 2. Could be okay. Maybe throw in some Deadly Poisons. Not exactly an archetype, but it could be some card draw support. I think this is an interesting change. Halkias, old Death Rattle. If you control a secret, store Halkias' soul inside of it. It resummons Halkias when triggered. So if it dies and there's a secret, Halkias gets resummoned when the secret procs. New, Stealth, with the same thing. Okay, that's a bit better because now it's just not killable. You get to choose how it trades, assuming there's no like weird AoEs or stuff. So you can actually play a secret, then trade it to force it inside of the secret. So this does make it better. I don't think this ever subplay now in this expansion. This might make it a bit more playable, but again, the rest of these secrets haven't really been changed. So I don't know if this will make it playable, but you know, maybe people will experiment, will find something. Dev comment. Card draw has traditionally been one of Rogue's strengths, but it doesn't feel like a strength in the current meta. That's fine, it doesn't have to be. We don't need to change that. The buffs to Edwin, Sprint, and Silverleaf Poison are all made with the intention of reinforcing card draw as a strength of the class. Well, it's not. Miracle Rogue has not been overperforming in power, agreed, but we are aware it can win in frustrating ways. Very agreed. So we'll be keeping an eye on how it develops following these buffs. Sure. I don't think most of these cards fit in Miracle Rogue. Okay, this does. Maybe you can squeeze in Sprint. So now you're just not all in on that early sort of Snowfall Graveyard Loan Shark opening, and you can have some sort of more consistent game plan with sprints. It's a bit slower, but it might be okay. We also wanted to show a little love to the new secret package. Yeah, that's fair. It's kind of underwhelming. We're starting with a buff to Halkias that makes him feel better to play, but we may revisit this package later if it needs additional support. Cool. I like this. This kind of approach they've started to take over the past, I don't know, a few expansions has been really nice. Where they take some risks, make some changes, and then readjust if needed after a little bit of time to assess how the changes have performed. So I do like that they're trying stuff. Except for Edwin. Okay. Next up. Warrior. Okay. Warrior, maybe playable. Sanguine Depths. Old, deal 1 damage to minion, give it a +1 attack. New, deal 1 and give it +2 attack. Literally not even a change. This card will not get any better. Keck W. To be fair, I don't think you can change this card that much to make it playable, but I'm going to say this is not the card you need to change to make it playable. Will this increase the win rate? Very, very, very slightly, but not enough to make it remotely playable. Warrior is like the worst class by an incredible margin. Actually, that's not true. Demon Hunter is also pretty bad, but those two are the worst classes by an incredible margin. All right, Imbue Axe. After your attacks, give your damage minions +1/+1, infuse 3+2/+2 instead. The new one is +1/+2, and the infuse is still... Oh, the infuse is different, so you only have to infuse twice now, and it's +2/+2, and the initial one is a bit better. But it has to be damage minions, which makes it really... It is a little restrictive. I don't think this is still playable. It's definitely better, but I don't think this archetype in general is playable. And I think some other changes need to be made before this is playable, and not the support cards. I think so, like, core cards need to be changed. Taskmaster, it's now a River Croc with the same battle cry. Okay, ha ha ha. Along with Demon Hunter, Warrior has been struggling this expansion. Huh, no way. A big part of that is that their new Enraged Warrior... that was a little toxic. I really like playing Warrior, and they absolutely neutered it last patch cycle. A big part of that is that their new Enraged Warrior archetype hasn't been nearly as powerful as we'd hoped it would be. Okay. These 3 buffs are targeted at improving the Enraged Warrior archetype, which we hope to see become a player in the metagame. These 3 changes will not do that. I can wholeheartedly, with 100% confidence, say that this will not be enough. I think you need more. But we'll see. Tidal Revenant, old 5/5, deal 5, gain 5. Now it's deal 5, gain 8. So they reverted the nerf they made earlier. This is also not relevant. This is not why the class was good, and this is not going to make the class good again. So it's nice that they're making tweaks to cards that aren't actually going to affect the class. I think they're kind of afraid... let me scroll a bit. Yeah, I think they're kind of afraid to re-nerf... unnerf. / buff the cards that they initially... I mean, it's basically From the Depths. I think they're scared of changing From the Depths back. I don't think they need to change Nelly back. I've talked about this in a previous patch as well, but Nelly was kind of busted. But still, these changes are not enough to make the class good. Shield Shatter now deals 5 to minions instead of 4 with the same effect. I think this is good. This I don't think should have been nerfed in the first place. I'm glad they're reverting this. This will still make it board cleary, but it's not going to help Warrior win games. Slam... it's 1 mana now. This card is actually really quite good at 1 mana, but it doesn't solve the issue, right? It doesn't matter if you draw cards and conclude the board if you can't win. And these cards might help you win, but it doesn't really help you win though. And finally, Bash. It used to be 3, now it's 2. And this is nice again. These are all tweaks, but I don't think this will help. I think people are going to experiment for a couple days and come to the conclusion that this is still not going to make the class playable. Changing the class's win percent from like 41 to 42 isn't really the... I think you need to change some bigger cards for this to have a more impactful impact. We may have been a little overzealous when we were addressing controller in the last balance patch. We're correcting that here. I don't think you are, but we'll let the stats speak for them. We're also giving them a couple new tools in Slam and Bash, which might even make their way into non-control warrior lists. Yeah, I mean, 2 mana deal 3 is probably just okay in like aggressive archetypes as well. I don't think it's that bad. And Slam as well. It doesn't have to be a control card. In a cycle heavy Enraged lit, or I mean, it doesn't even have to be a cycle heavy, but just 1 mana cycle a card plus deal 2 is actually really quite nice. And it also is useful in control just for card draw, and it's useful in like combo decks because 1 mana cycle is quite good. I hope I'm wrong about this, but I really don't think this is going to change Warrior at all. I think Rogue... I don't think these cards... I think these will help a little bit, but I don't think Rogue really needed that much of a buffer. And this is definitely, I think, over the edge. They might have to revert this. I don't think Paladin is going to be playable. It's going to be tweaked slightly. I think Demon Hunter will see quite a rise in win rate, mainly because of these 2 cards. There's a chance these make the aggressive archetype a bit better, but I think the more important thing is the fact that slightly slower Demon Hunter decks have quite a bit more mana available to them now. So I think that's going to be more playable. So Demon Hunter... very, very big winner here. A couple of nerfs here, which I think are more or less in line. There's some other cards I'd like to see. Guff is a big one and some other stuff, but I'll talk about that in another video. I don't know if the buffs are good enough. Except for Edwin, because you know how I feel about Edwin. And there's some battlegrounds changes and stuff as well. But that's standard. We'll see how the meta pans out. Hopefully I'm wrong about some stuff, but I'm not expecting to be. In any case, enjoy the patch. Let me know what you guys think about the new decks. Let me know if some of the decks you guys like to play are getting buffed or nerfed or whatever. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.